Welcome to Ian Cinema, your destination for endless entertainment and unforgettable movie moments. Discover exciting films, inspiring stories, and cinematic journeys across every genre. Whether you love action, drama, thrillers, or timeless favorites, there's always something waiting for you here. Sit back, enjoy the experience, and let Ian Cinema bring the magic of movies to your screen. In this video, we dive into the world of Spartacus, House of Ashur. We will discuss the storyline, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. We will also cover the production details, box office performance, critical reviews, and audience reactions. So, let's get started. Before discussing House of Ashur, it is important to remember that Spartacus, Blood and Sand became a major success for Starz. The series was chosen as the foundation for a new dramatic expansion because titles like 300, Blood and Sand or Gladiator, Sand and Blood would not have created the same impact. However, there are noticeable similarities between the brutal style of these projects, especially in the way the show attempts to recreate the visual intensity, violence, and dramatic presentation associated with films like 300. While House of Ashur clearly takes inspiration from those earlier works, it creates its own identity through its storytelling and characters. The series follows Ashur, a former Slav who rises to the brutal world of Roman politics and gladiatorial combat. After refusing to obey Roman authority, Ashur finds himself thrown into the gladiator arena, separated from the woman he loves, and forced to endure unimaginable challenges in the hope that they may one day reunite. The story explores themes of survival, ambition, betrayal, and power. Ashur must navigate a dangerous world filled with ruthless warriors, political schemes, and enemies who will stop at nothing to destroy him. His journey brings him face to face with powerful figures, including gladiators, trainers, and Roman elites who shape his destiny. The series features a talented cast, including Graham McTavish as Chorus, Jodie Weber as Tycoon, Jamaica Vaughn as Hilora, Ivana Baguero, India Shaw Smith as Viria, Jackson Gallagher as Gaius, Jamie Slater as Cornelia, and Lee Gillis Styris. Nick Tarabay returns as Ashur, leading the series with his intense performance and complex portrayal of the character driven by ambition and survival. Created and written by Stephen Estonite, Spartacus, House of Ashur is executive produced by Stephen Estonite, Nick Tarabay, Rick Jacobson, and Aaron Helbing. The series is produced by Landscape Television and continues the legacy of the original Spartacus franchise. The original Spartacus series debuted on Starz in 2010 with its first season titled Spartacus, Blood and Sand. It was followed by the prequel series Spartacus, Gods of the Arena in 2011, then Spartacus, Vengeance in 2012, and Spartacus, War of the Damned in 2013. The new series continues the franchise with a darker and more ambitious story, although it maintains the signature elements of the franchise: intense battles, political conflict, and dramatic character struggles. That also expands the world by focusing on Ashur's rise to power. The show includes violent action sequences, graphic combat, and mature themes, making it a series designed for audiences who enjoy the original franchise. While some viewers may find the excessive violence and stylistic choices overwhelming, fans of Spartacus may appreciate its return to the world of ancient Rome. Spartacus, House of Ashur premiered on Starz with a 2-episode launch, followed by weekly episodes available through the Starz app, streaming platforms, and the network's linear channel. With its combination of revenge, power struggles, and gladiatorial action, House of Ashur brings back the brutal atmosphere that made the original series popular while introducing a new chapter in the story of Ashur. In the next chapter of this legendary saga, the vision came from Sam Raimi and the team behind Ash vs. Evil Dead. The question they explored was simple but fascinating: what if Ashur had never left, and the Romans had rewarded him with ownership of the very gladiator school where he once suffered? Welcome to Spartacus, House of Ashur. No longer a slave, Ashur has climbed his way to power. now controlling the same arena where he was once treated as property. In this brutal world, gladiator combat is not considered a crime, it is a currency. Asher turns the entire system upside down by introducing a new generation of warriors, including Danica, a fierce and determined gladiator who is ready to prove herself in a world dominated by men. Together, they create a new kind of spectacle, one that is shocking, unpredictable, and filled with violence. Every battle, every betrayal, and every drop of blood pushes the story into darker territory. The cast also features Graham McTavish, Jessica Webb, Jamaica Vaughan, and Gloria Black. For anyone wanting to revisit the original Spartacus series, all chapters are available to stream through digital stores. The original series, Spartacus, Blood and Sand, premiered in 2010 and was followed by the prequel series Spartacus, Gods of the Arena in 2011. Two more seasons followed: Spartacus, Vengeance in 2012 and Spartacus, War of the Damned in 2013. The third season of the flagship series was announced as the final chapter. The upcoming final season, titled Spartacus, War of the Damned, premiered in January 2013. Series creator and executive producer Steven S. DeKnight explained that ending the story was an extremely difficult and emotional decision. However, he believed the best way to honor the series was to bring the remaining action and drama together into one powerful final season, the conclusion that would satisfy the loyal fans who had followed Spartacus' journey from the beginning. Spartacus, Blood and Sand became a breakout success for Starz when it premiered in January 2010. The series faced a heartbreaking challenge after the loss of its leading actor Randy Whitfield, who passed away after battling cancer. The second season, Spartacus, Vengeance, starring Liam McIntyre in the title role, attracted millions of viewers every week. The series introduced television audiences to a highly stylized visual approach that had previously been seen mainly in films like 300. Its successful prequel, Gods of the Arena, was distributed internationally in more than 150 countries and became a strong-selling DVD release. Spartacus became a landmark series for the network, attracting millions of viewers and fans around the world. Starz CEO Chris Albrecht stated that the decision to conclude the story was made because it was the best way to preserve the series' quality, protect its legacy, and deliver a meaningful ending. Because Spartacus was based on the real historical figure, the creators felt it was important to follow a story path that had no conclusion. War of the Damned takes place after Spartacus and his rebellion achieved major victories against Rome. Following the defeat of Roman commander Gaius Claudius Glaber, the rebel army grows to more than 30,000 fighters. The production expanded on a massive scale, featuring the construction of an entire city, a Roman villa, and the battlefield where the final conflict would take place. The season brought back returning cast members such as Manu Bennett and introduced new characters, including Simon Reels as Marcus Crassus and Anna Hutchison. For viewers who have never watched the series, I wanted to share why I became so invested in it. This review covers the first season without major spoilers, except for a few bullet points highlighting favorite moments and memorable scenes. During this slow period for television, I found myself searching through on-demand options for something new to watch, partly influenced by my recent interest in the God of War video games. I decided to give Starz' Spartacus, Blood and Sand a chance. At first, the show challenged some of my personal preferences, but surprisingly, I quickly became hooked and was glad I gave it a try. Spartacus, Blood and Sand follows the journey of a Thracian warrior whose life changes forever after an agreement with the Roman army goes terribly wrong. He and his wife are captured and forced into slavery, with Spartacus being sent away to face what appears to be certain death. Against all odds, he survives and begins his new life as a gladiator. While this story may already be familiar to some because of the 1960 film Spartacus or the historical events that inspired it, I entered the series knowing only the basic outline. This allowed the show to maintain a strong sense of suspense because I did not know the personal journeys of the characters or how the story would unfold. One of the most enjoyable parts was researching the real history behind the events and discovering which elements were inspired by actual Roman history. It added another layer of appreciation to the series. The biggest strength of the show from the beginning is undoubtedly the action. The fight scenes are spectacular, especially the arena battles. The choreography, visual style, and intense brutality create unforgettable moments that often leave viewers amazed. Although some visual effects can occasionally feel exaggerated, such as dramatic blood splashes and flying body parts, they add to the unique style of the series. Overall, the incredible combat sequences alone make the show worth watching. Seeing different fighting techniques throughout the series, from swords and shields to tridents and other weapons, is fascinating. Each battle style adds something new and keeps the action fresh. However, the show does take some time to find its rhythm. The early episodes feel rough around the edges, but by the middle of the first season, everything begins to come together. The storytelling, character development, and overall pacing improve significantly. Some of the major events that happen halfway through the season could have easily been stretched across multiple seasons, so the fast-moving story was impressive. One of the elements that kept me interested was the clever and manipulative strategies used by the characters outside the arena. The Gladiator training school, known as Gladiator, becomes one of the most important locations in the series. The owner of the school, Spartacus, is a memorable character, played by John Hannah. He is the type of villain viewers love to hate. His ambition, intelligence, and ruthless decisions make him a powerful opponent for Spartacus, not through physical strength, but through strategy and manipulation. His wife Lucretia, along with several other characters, also makes shocking choices throughout the story. The show succeeds because it creates villains who are not only cruel but also intelligent and capable. Another fascinating aspect of the series is its dialogue. The characters speak with a dramatic, almost poetic style that feels different from everyday conversation. It gives the impression of how ancient Latin might sound if translated into modern English, creating a unique atmosphere that fits the world of Spartacus. What makes the series even more interesting is the way it mixes humor into its intense and dramatic storytelling. Alongside the poetic speeches about sunsets and destiny, viewers will repeatedly hear the phrase "Jupiter's cock," which appears hundreds of times throughout the show and becomes part of the unique language and style of the series. That being said, this is definitely a show made for adults. The strong language, extreme violence, nudity, and sexual content make that very clear. At times, I personally found myself rolling my eyes because the show seemed unable to resist adding unnecessary moments of shock value. There are scenes that suddenly cut to women in the arena exposing themselves or characters engaging in explicit acts in the background, seemingly just to push boundaries. At first, it may feel like the show is relying too heavily on blood, violence, and spectacle, but by the end of the first season, I was completely invested in the drama. Spartacus, Blood and Sand proves that it is much more than just a show filled with fighting and shock moments. Beneath all the brutality is clever writing, strong character development, and personalities that viewers genuinely grow attached to. I was especially surprised by how quickly the story moved. Earlier, I mentioned the fast pacing, and one example of this is how Spartacus' wife is killed halfway through the season. I was equally surprised by how quickly Spartacus rises to become a champion. Looking back, these choices make more sense, but a slower approach could have allowed certain storylines and villains to develop even further. Two moments especially stood out to me when discussing the writing. One was Spartacus' handling of the magistrate's death, and the other was Spartacus' transformation throughout the season. Asher also plays an important role in these events and slowly develops into one of the show's most fascinating villains. Choosing a favorite character is difficult, but I would have to go with Spartacus himself. Andy Whitfield delivered an incredible performance, bringing both strength and vulnerability to the character. I loved how his passion for justice revealed a softer side of his personality and became the driving force behind his actions throughout all the violence and chaos. The first season features many memorable battles, but one of my favorites is the fight where Spartacus and another warrior are forced to work together against a powerful opponent. The choreography is impressive, and the enemy's intimidating presence makes the battle even more exciting. Seeing Spartacus finally overcome such a challenge is incredibly satisfying. There were also moments where I could not believe what was being shown on television. One scene that stands out, whether for better or worse, involves a gladiator suffering a brutal injury that becomes one of the show's most extreme examples of violence. It represents the shocking and unforgiving nature of the series. The final episode is one of the most memorable hours of television in the entire show. It may even be the strongest episode of the season. Watching Spartacus lead a rebellion against the people who enslaved him and his fellow captives is unforgettable. When Crixus finally chooses to support Spartacus, leading to the dramatic assassination attempt against Basiatus on the balcony, it becomes a truly powerful moment. I will continue exploring the series in future reviews, including the other seasons. Those discussions will be shorter and will focus more on the major events and developments. For those who have already watched the show, I would love to hear your thoughts. What were your favorite moments and characters from Spartacus? Blood and Sand. Spartacus, Blood and Sand was developed as one of Starz's major original series following the success of projects like 300, Rome, and Gladiator-inspired stories, created by Steven Eston Knight, who also worked on shows such as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, Dollhouse, Smallville, and later Marvel's Daredevil. The series is set in 73 BC and is inspired by the historical legend of Spartacus, the famous gladiator who led a major Slav rebellion against the Roman Republic. The story follows Spartacus, played by Andy Whitfield, a Thracian warrior who deserts the Roman army and is separated from his people. After refusing to follow Roman orders, he is captured and sentenced to fight in the gladiator arena. However, after surviving and proving himself as a skilled fighter, he is sold into slavery at the house of Basiatus, a gladiator training school run by Quintus Basiatus, played by John Hannah, alongside his wife Lucretia, portrayed by Lucy Lawless. Separated from his wife, Spartacus agrees to fight in the arena with the promise that he will eventually be reunited with her. The series feels like a combination of Gladiator, 300, and classic sword and sandal epics, featuring exaggerated combat, extreme violence, and a highly stylized visual approach. Spartacus consists of 3 seasons along with a prequel miniseries, Spartacus, Gods of the Arena, which explores events before the first season. In the opening episodes of Blood and Sand, the show uses an exaggerated blood effect that can feel almost cartoonish. It often looks like buckets of red paint are being thrown across the screen, and the series uses this style constantly. However, this extreme approach becomes less noticeable after the first few episodes. The violence remains intense, but the effects become more controlled and better suited to the dramatic moments and fight choreography. When it comes to historical accuracy, the general consensus is that the series is surprisingly faithful in many ways. Of course, certain events are changed or dramatized for entertainment, but the foundation of the story is based on real history. Before watching the show, I only knew Spartacus as a famous historical figure, but the series introduced me to the legend behind his rebellion and helped me understand why his story remains so powerful. The writing is one of the show's greatest strengths. The story moves smoothly, the events are easy to follow, and the characters feel meaningful. The world looks impressive, with detailed environments and believable settings. While it does not reach the same level of historical realism as HBO's Rome, it still creates a convincing world that works extremely well. Spartacus features a large cast of important characters who become easy to care about. The audience understands their struggles, believes in their motivations, and begins supporting their fight for freedom. The main cast delivers strong performances, with each actor fully embracing their role. Andy Whitfield portrays Spartacus with incredible intensity and emotion. Following Whitfield's tragic passing after the first season, the role was later taken over by Liam McIntyre, who continued the character's journey in the later seasons. Both actors delivered excellent performances, and while many fans still remember Andy Whitfield's portrayal, there is no denying that his performance was something truly special. Whitfield brought a deep sense of sadness and emotional weight to the role. There was a vulnerability and intensity in his performance that Liam McIntyre simply could not fully replicate. It was heartbreaking that Whitfield never got the chance to complete the series. However, Spartacus, Blood and Sand remains, in my opinion, the strongest season of the entire series, not only because of Whitfield's powerful portrayal of Spartacus, but also because of its well-balanced moral themes and emotionally rich storytelling. The season was made on a smaller scale compared to what followed, but its emotional impact was much stronger. That does not mean the other seasons were not great. They absolutely were, but Blood and Sand had something unique. Andy Whitfield's performance was truly remarkable, and Liam McIntyre also did an excellent job stepping into an incredibly difficult role. Many people judge McIntyre too harshly because he replaced Whitfield, but he deserves credit. Continuing the series after such a tragic loss was already a difficult challenge, and fans should appreciate that the story continued at all. Whitfield's passing also led to the creation of Spartacus, Gods of the Arena, which gave viewers another memorable chapter in the franchise. It is important to recognize the positives that came from such a difficult situation. The entire cast was outstanding, but the two performances that stood out the most were John Hannah as Quintus Spasianus and Lucy Lawless as Lucretia. Whenever these two appeared on screen, the show became unforgettable television. Their characters were cruel, ambitious, and manipulative, yet incredibly entertaining to watch. Their relationship with each other and with the world around them was one of the strongest elements of the series. Another memorable character was Moss, played by Peter Mensah. As the Gladiator trainer Doctor, he was strict and brutal in his methods but deeply loyal to his master and his responsibilities. He was a man of strong principles and carried the respect of both Slavs and, to some extent, his Roman masters. However, he had also lost his sense of identity, becoming someone who truly believed in the very system that oppressed him. His loyalty and inner conflict made him a fascinating character. Manu Bennett also delivered a fantastic performance as Crixus. His character development throughout the series was beautifully handled, especially his relationship with Via. Their love story felt genuine, emotional, and believable. Both actors brought incredible depth to their roles. If you are looking for the gritty realism found in an HBO historical drama, this may not be the series for you. Spartacus is loud, intense, and unapologetically over the top, and that is exactly what makes it work. It is a thrilling story inspired by historical events and legends, focusing on a man who rises from slavery and leads a rebellion against the Roman Empire. The series features excellent writing, strong direction, and outstanding performances. If HBO's Rome felt too slow, Zack Snyder's 300 felt too exaggerated, or Gladiator felt too polished and mainstream, then Spartacus might be the perfect balance. It combines the best elements of all three: epic battles, political drama, and unforgettable characters. The show is violent, graphic, and extremely stylish in its presentation. The exaggerated blood effects and dramatic action sequences are part of its unique identity. While the early episodes may feel excessive, those elements eventually settle into the background as the story becomes stronger. It is a journey worth experiencing, and watching the series again reveals even more details and appreciation for what it achieved. The ending may feel slightly abrupt, but it still provides enough closure. The story wraps up in a satisfying way, leaving the audience with a sense of completion. If you have not watched Spartacus yet, it is definitely worth checking out. However, you should know exactly what you are getting into. If you want blood, brutal battles, and intense action, Spartacus delivers exactly that. Revisiting the complete Blu-ray collection of Spartacus reminded me why the series became such a memorable experience. Over time, the show has been analyzed through countless reviews, including discussions of each season and its releases. Looking back at several episodes, one thing becomes clear: The series changed dramatically during its early run. My first impressions of Spartacus, Blood and Sand were uncertain, as many ambitious shows take time to find their identity. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than a 300-style action series filled with exaggerated violence and visual effects, but as the story progressed, it became clear that there was much more beneath the surface. The series follows Spartacus, a man taken away from his wife and homeland and forced into the life of a gladiator in Capua. While the classic elements of his story are present, the show is not only about historical events, it is also a dramatic mix of ambition, betrayal, revenge, violence, and survival. What Spartacus does best is fully embrace what it wants to be. From the beginning, it establishes itself as one of the most violent and visually extreme shows ever released on television. The battles are filled with slow-motion action, dramatic camera work, and unforgettable moments of brutality. Every sword strike, every injury, and every drop of blood is presented with exaggerated intensity. The fight scenes are designed to shock and entertain, though they can lose some of their impact once viewers become familiar with the style. The show uses digital effects heavily, creating a comic book-like appearance where every battle feels larger than life. At first, it can be overwhelming, but eventually it becomes part of the series' charm. Of course, Spartacus, Blood and Sand can also be incredibly over-the-top. The dialogue, characters, and situations often feel exaggerated, almost like a heightened version of ancient history. The series borrows heavily from other famous works set in the ancient world. The slow-motion action and visual style clearly take inspiration from Zack Snyder's 300. While much of the Gladiator drama draws influence from Ridley Scott's Gladiator and HBO's Rome, the dialogue is intentionally dramatic, with characters speaking in a stylized way that sometimes feels like an attempt to recreate the rhythm of ancient language. While some lines can sound unnatural, they also contribute to the unique personality of the show. The first episode is arguably the most outrageous, pushing the series' style to its extreme. The second episode continues with a similar tone but focuses more on developing the characters and storylines within the House of Spartacus. By the third and fourth episodes, the series begins to find its rhythm, and once Spartacus, Blood and Sand captures your attention, it becomes incredibly difficult to stop watching. In this review, we will explore the first season in detail and discuss some of the most memorable elements that made Spartacus such a fascinating and unforgettable series. Some of the historical details are fascinating, and I also wanted to spend some time discussing a few of the most interesting errors and inaccuracies. If you have not watched this series yet, I recommend skipping this article for now, as I will try to avoid major spoilers. Spartacus, Blood and Sand takes inspiration from the same historical events as the 1960 film Spartacus, but the series quickly develops its own identity. Instead of rushing through the story, the first season of 13 episodes takes its time establishing the characters, political conflicts, and personal struggles. Ancient sources do not provide much information about the years before the revolt, giving the writers considerable freedom to expand and dramatize this period. In the very first episode, Spartacus is introduced as a Thracian, a member of a tribe that Roman accounts often portrayed as barbaric enemies. Spartacus and his people initially form an alliance with Rome, agreeing to help the Republic in its war against other tribes. In return, the Romans promise to assist them in defeating their enemies. However, when it comes to historical accuracy, the show often takes significant creative liberties. For example, Spartacus and his men wear helmets that bear a striking resemblance to those seen in 300, including the exaggerated extended forehead design. The costumes and military equipment are clearly designed more for visual impact than historical realism. Roman officers are shown wearing what appear to be elaborate ceremonial helmets, despite little evidence supporting such designs. The series also includes the famous leather outfits associated with Hollywood portrayals of ancient Rome, even though they have little connection to historical reality. Although the show was produced in New Zealand, a map places the action near the Propontis, an area connected to ancient Thrace. According to the legend, Gladiator Gaius Claudius Glaber makes a deal that ultimately leads to conflict with Spartacus, causing him and his followers to rebel and kill a large number of Roman soldiers. The ancient writer Plutarch, who is not always considered completely reliable, claimed that Spartacus had been a soldier and possibly a former auxiliary. Some sources also suggest that he may have fought as a gladiator, possibly in the Thracian style of combat. However, the exact details of his early life remain uncertain. The series also creates several fictional elements. Some scenes appear to take place in the middle of winter, with foggy landscapes and forests that feel more like a fantasy setting than the Mediterranean world. Spartacus' wife, Syrra, is shown gathering fruit in the wilderness before being attacked and captured. Just before tragedy strikes, Spartacus arrives and defeats her attackers in a dramatic display of violence. Violence is one of the defining features of Spartacus. Blood and sand. Spartacus arrives just in time to save his wife, but their suffering continues at every turn. Their village is destroyed by forces left unchecked by Rome, creating another emotional turning point in the story. However, some geographical details are difficult to accept. Spartacus is originally associated with Thrace, which was located north of Greece and around the northern Aegean region. The series later places him traveling through areas that do not always match historical geography. For example, his journey by ship does not always follow realistic routes, and some locations appear to have been changed for dramatic reasons rather than accuracy. Ancient sources state that Capua was one of the most important cities in Campania and that it was connected to gladiatorial training. This connection is especially interesting because some Roman writers claim gladiatorial contests originated from the Etruscans. Although modern historians often question this idea, a more likely explanation is that gladiatorial combat developed in Campania before the 1st century BC, possibly influenced by earlier Greek traditions of ritual combat and funeral games. Once Spartacus arrives in Capua, the series introduces the man who would eventually purchase him and train him as a gladiator. Historically, he is known as Basiatus. Although the show changes some names and details for dramatic purposes, he is portrayed as a classic Roman elite figure, ambitious, manipulative, and obsessed with status. The gladiator school in Capua is presented as a grand structure, appearing similar to Roman arenas built during the later imperial period rather than the earlier republic. Spartacus is eventually forced to fight against 4 gladiators in an exaggerated and brutal battle scene. If there is one word that describes this part of Spartacus, blood and sand, it is excessive. But that does not mean the show is bad. In fact, its willingness to embrace over-the-top violence, dramatic performances, and extreme Roman decadence is part of what makes it entertaining. The series is not trying to be a strict historical documentary. It is a stylized, violent interpretation of an ancient legend. The creators take a relatively simple historical figure and expand his story across multiple seasons. Instead of focusing only on political discussions and military strategy, the show places its characters in a world of luxury, betrayal, and corruption. Many important conversations happen in extravagant Roman settings, surrounded by wealth, servants, and temptation. The series fully embraces its adult themes, including graphic violence, sexuality, and dramatic visual effects. At times, it clearly tries to capture the visual style of Zack Snyder's 300, though its effects and cinematography do not always reach that level. So why is it worth watching? The answer lies in the writing and performances. Beneath all the violence and spectacle, Spartacus succeeds because of its characters. The actors bring emotional depth to scenes that could easily have become meaningless. Even during moments filled with distractions, the focus remains on what the characters are feeling, thinking, and saying. The sexual content becomes almost secondary, functioning more as part of the world rather than the main focus. The real strength of the series comes from its understanding of epic storytelling. A hero must struggle, suffer, and overcome impossible challenges before the audience can truly connect with him. That is exactly what happens with Spartacus. Throughout the first season, nothing comes easily for him. Every victory creates another problem, and every moment of hope is followed by greater suffering. Yet when he finally begins fighting back, viewers cannot help but support his rage and determination. The performances and emotional storytelling often rise above the show's excessive style. Spartacus, Blood and Sand is the kind of series that makes you want to celebrate its ambition while also questioning some of its choices. It is flawed, exaggerated, and historically inaccurate in many ways, but it remains a powerful example of dramatic storytelling built around revenge, survival, and freedom. Some might argue that you have to give yourself our exploitation, but I think ultimately the sex and violence do a great job illustrating exactly what idea was that saw trouble the Roman Empire and create this progress as a truly just a man cast among pimp barbarism spreading around as civility. There is so much intelligence behind the face that Ida cannot be discounted for pending for. It is something that once began becoming hard to put on and ordered it on DVD and a Blu-ray. Music A can relish every delicious stick and moment of Season 1. The box set comes with a standard array of special features. Most of us should be familiar with making of gag origin of the show. The only interesting variation is a sizzle rib outright minute of the bloodiest moment from the series all queued together to music as this tend to be showcases there is strength of the budget. Music. It wasn't my cup of tea, but if the violence interests you, Thesa should do the trick. Historical fiction is quite a popular genre film between a hit series like The Brighter Tone and The Outlander. It has certainly found a place in the market. One such series will be Make It Marcus Sparked as it was show based on the real-life Spartacus how ladies live as rising in Roman 73 ABC. The series saw moderate popularity at the time of the release and at the Asian Award of Plot Best TV Action Series and Best TV Hero Spark Test ran for a total of 3 seasons in as many a year. Music. It's been a decade since the final season of Spark Test, but a new interest has arisen in the franchise, and in fact a sequel series has been a green light for production while we wait for the new content. Music. To become Toafutition. We can look back on what Starz has given us, admire it for what it is as well as what it lacks. Here's every season in the original Spock series ranked. A second season is a Spartacus series and arguably Doris. Music A. That season follows the Spark after Spartacus after Gladiator killed his Moses and escaped from his Gladiator training school. One of the biggest reasons for the fall of this spite isolating this recalling of the title E character and Whitfield, who played a sporty as his blood and son, had to go out due to the cancer diagnosis and was replaced by Lame. While Starz was unsure if recussing was even impossible, Whitfield insisted that he showed without him. Music. They being said, Vince obviously were not as sure about the change. The very first season of the series was given the name Lord and Sanda. Music. To help significantly spy sacrifices as he was conjuring, Music A for his life is seen as nothing more than the entertainment. Soon Spartacus will come to be realizes that the battle outside of this arena are just as he faces off against lust and corruption. Music A Vad and the Sun premiered in January 2010 and undoubtedly the best season in the series that has a strong focus on the Spartacus earlier life before his legendary time leading the club after sizing his room. Although a critical reception of the first season was originally mixed, it became more positive as the season progressed between he and the Outlander. It was certainly found its place in market. One such series to be making is Spark, our TV show based on a real-life Spartacus while ladies live uprising in Roman 73 BC. Russian headlong into his final with a true sense of revolution. Spartacus' weakness is said to be complete and incredible is a strong season by finishing what it has touted with Kill Jamal way back in April of 2010. Moreover, Spartacus Vegas faces an unlikely challenger in its own storytelling by having to face the prospect of exceeding the kind of epic grandiously on display in episode like the Labor Testers and last week's Monster. Suffice to say, the season final rate of Discord does note disappointed. This episode is nearly a virtual action dire gloriously upend to the Sword series after Square sever the lingering plot thread and once more redefines the man's biggest become for Thea pending third season whatever they might be subtitled as storm cloud blew over a Spartacus band of rebel is nearly unturned by the impressions of name as a Ranchem after they attempt to escape Thea Mountain and take on a small band of Roman soldier. Unfortunately, their escape is met by the arrival of Ashura and the Egyptian were not for the intervention of Myra. Music, and eventually Spartacus's cases Johnny Casagrone she surely would have met here and, sadly, it is Myra who has dealt Thea a dead blow and while she earns Vortex and had been glowing apart after the events in the balance her that bring to Thea forefront the season for Spartacus winners and S for rest of the episodia one in which any character no matter Thea importance he or she have to Thea series narrative may become a casualty before this season is officially in Thea record book. Meanwhile, in the P of Thea seat below, Gallagher and the Ashurs are vital otter waiting for the rebel to stop a dob in the mountain by fixating on Thea life they will read once objectionably uprising his final equal such presenta are put on hold. However, as he arrival up and herders in every globs arrangement with Ashur, effectively putting to rest any obstacles the Maya have had of transferring the Lidus and Wat music into the host of the Ashur. Only a good deserves another thought as Gabra cannot have any loose end, so he orders his newly beautiful wife to eliminate him before the couple embark on J return it to the Rome. Music, if losing out on all the promises of the house of Ashur was not bad enough, thus Aaron quickly loses his loyalty of this music man and very nearly his life at the hands of the Egyptian rather than simply kill him. Music. The labor sends Ashur to Thea knew the terms of this predict surrender naturally. Deity Belpel it politely refuses this Philly message to Gabber Hada separated from music. These shoulders first. At first it seems unlikely that both Madam and I would fall in the same episode. But despite her age Ashur appear poised to once more aware. Music have his eyes jawed at least long enough for Cyrus to kill him. After a heart-wrenching and brutal brawl, Rija to cut Naya's throat pauses to add a ridicule, but in doing so open himself up to a devastating slice from Navy ounce of blood that almost certainly row him for his weapon of choice. While Ashur gets a verbal shock at Naya before she hacka music. His head of the tree wishes a blow. Thus meeting of her manager is the beginning of Navy's transformation from a victim to be fearsome var. If Thea thought assures that brought about a sense of glare, then the going on back at Eddie Ludos will appropriately mind-blowing all season long. It was clear the him and game plan that was known only to music. Her and the end goal she had in mind by the unborn span of this partis and lead children of course the liberty line of the night was a saying in the mother to be your child you better whistle carrying a gift from a god to the house of the bad now. Music hey let us see it unwrap having got his a child from Laylo she makes her way toward the cliff. Music, and seen as dramatic a goodbye as could possibly imagine Joyina. Music. Her husband in the afterlife bringing with her the child she failed to give harm in life but right of Thea gods is not done yet after descending of the sheer face of Giglad for began Thea assault during Labor's camp. Music. By turning the Roman army's focus against them and with a climatic battle is upon us having delivered the final scene of so many memorable characters to reason that only the label would be left on the fell's bloody dropping black but not so say series creator Stefanza. Music. Reignite incoming to a man who betrayed him battle and Severalia injured from his last run-in with the Egyptians. Music. Save life but file S instead and it's hard to see the unsia pro doctor go he is that actually a reliforma as for Gabber, he said services as a final act to the amazing character that has brought spark from the unknown to a Slav gladiator and no music. The leader of the army is united by a singular purpose to bring freedom to those long-suffering music. Under the Empire. It also shows how Sporter's Ice is said to be take on the video challenge of telling a larger more than a decade after Spice went off the air. Music. A spin-off series entitled Spectre's House of Ashur has been announced to take a viewer back to ancient Rome once again. Music. Beginning with its first season in 2010, sports concern a live abnormouse figure who is a great editor who led a successful music slave surprising between the year 73 and 71 BSE with an eye toward action and history. Spartacus stretched out across 3 exciting seasons before finally being cancelled in 2013, arriving on a small second around the same time as contemporaries like Game of the Throne. Swaz had plenty of the action but supplemented it with historical intrigue. SP was not always historically a curated stroke of a final balance between the total of fabrication and the true story from ancient history. Many months after the last update arrived, the latest news comes in the form of a teaser trailer and release window for Spark House of Ashur. The sub-1-minute teaser will returning ashore as a returning music Turina in the drama and a challenging series highlighting the showism and thrilling action. The trailer features several moments of Gladiator doing better in front of a hungry audience. It does not give away much. The trailer does conclude with the reveal that Spark House of Ashur music is set to arrive on the Starz in fall 2025. Saturday. The show won't be dropping anytime soon and the premium cable channel was not able to narrow the release window down to specific date yet. However, source should provide a more detailed synopsis. Awards in store with a short return later in 2025. House of Ashur will be a history-bending, erotic, thrilling roller coaster experiences. It would take until May 2024 for all the detail to come out. The revival of Spark was first back in music, February 2023. Upon original announcement, Shower 7C was attached to what was a more straightforward continuation. However, in the intervening year, the project took a different turn and music became a Starz. It's unclear why so many changes, music took place, but the series has since solidified creativity in January 2025. Music. It was announced that House of Ashur will premiere in fall. The first name attached to the upcoming spin of Spartacus original series actor who returned as the villainous Ashur. The character original day met his doom on the slope of Mount when he was dispatched by a music navy before the code betrayed the slave uprising and earned a hefty reward for the Roman government. Whoever spoke also House of the Ashurs, giving viewer an alternate timeline where Ashur was successful. However, source has already disclosed to the rest of the main cast of House of Ashur and veteran character. Music actor Graham McDavies is joining the show as Ashur. Ivana and Jamaica will play Messa and Hilary respectively, Ashur's household slave who are engaged in a love triangle with their master rival Gladiator and Wapazia Ashur, while Jenica Davis will play the female gladiator. Claudia Back plays a scamming politician who in India Shah's mid-player. Her daughter Ivia. Fans have been writing to reject a return to the world of Starz for a decade, but the announcement of Starz House of Ashur shows it certainly has a strange approach instead of a direct continuation. Music. The new series of fast turn-back animation and alternate version of events where one cellista in the original series the evil Azaria was played handsomely by the Roman government to undermine and stop the owning slave uprising. Unfortunately for the heroes, he was unsuccessful and what was eventually killed. Music in Spark as House of Ashur. The backstabbing gladiator is instead able to stop the uprising and is music gifted his own gladiator training school. A very grateful Roman allied, assigning a villain as the main character is an interesting change of pace and some new conflict will need to be surfaced to make Ashur a hero worth noting for. The series could also present a butterfly effect and show how one tweak of the term land changed the course of history. Read from the bones of real the entire history of the ancient world. It could be rewritten. In January 2025, Comedy Stores offer the first look at Spartacus House Saudi or via teaser trailer. That's up 1-minute clip revealed the return of Nick Tarab. Music. As a Tilara character while also highlighting mania affection scene set within the arena. While it did not give much else away, The teaser served as a chance for Starz to reveal that a show will premiere in fall 2025. The Gladiator show sporters in Starz over a decade ago, and it's still a dominating to streaming Starz a month before. Music. Its sequel show, the original series, is a fictionalized take on the only life of real-life gladiators sparked. It ran for 3 seasons between 2010. Music. And 13, but the long-awaited sequel series House of the Ashore is slated to be premiered this fall, according to data from Flick Patrol. TV series is streaming on the source right now. Sport is followed by titles such as Thrill Woman Suite and Atlanta, which are newer or have had more recent season. Music. This is compelling data, especially given that the upcoming sequel series still doesn't have a confirmed release date, with so many streaming services producing original television. It's not surprising that a cable channel like Starz have fallen behind. Many of the best Starz services came during 2010. Music, such as Versus Evil. That Blackened network was never quite HBO level. It was still a reliable source of entertaining television. Music. The ongoing approach for Starz also evidenced by its current streaming data. Music. It is reason why the Starz merited a sequel in the first place, especially after such a long term. The numbers also indicate that House of Ashore could end up being a bigger hit than anyone is expecting. Music, especially given how limited the marketing has been prior to House of Ashore's release. Starz also has a sequel to the series releasing The Outlander, which means 2 of the platform's most widely recognized show will essentially have a new beginning, a joy for long-term fans of the title and a potential opening for a new viewer. Music, who are not willing to catch up on the older title. Doubtful that either Audi's release will be breaking record or pulling Netflix's number, but he will be excellent contribution for Starz, which has not had many major releases in recent years. Also someone who's watched particularly every notable Roman history adaptations and quite a few of the unknown myths. Music. One I'm happy to see spoke as a success. While I don't think it has the same as HBO's Room, which has its own flaws, Spooky Doctor is one of the most entertaining series in the setting. I understand that A House of the Ashore is just a mini-series, but it would be wonderful to see it have some success, potentially letting it to the other like it, aside from the German series Barbarians, which premiered on Netflix's. Music. There are not many distant ancient Rome, so I would recommend. I'm rooting for Spartacus. Swasby debuted only Starz in 2010 with a ferocity that set it apart from everything else on TV. That series was not content with it being an address, a word and sandal detailing, going directly for the draw with a bloody gladiator battle and stories of revenge, grief and betrayal. Music. The slow-motion fight clearly influenced by Zack Snyder 300 The show graphic bloodshed, but Haida was the exploration of power, loyalty and freedom that kept us invested even when a real-life tragedy forced the series to adopt a never-lost momentum across all 4 seasons of Spark dresses the show built to a final that achieved a satisfying care, proving the series it wasn't all just sex and shock value. And 15 years later, Spark has returned to Netflix on November 22 after leaving it years ago. Revisiting Spark at a test today feels like stepping back into one of TV's wildest swing from blood spraying an orc. Music. Swashing on operating slow motion, the show embarrassed success without apology, yet it never let it. Music. Cornage out a story that balances keeps it gripping more than a decade later. In 2011. Lead actor Randy Whitfield tragically passed away after being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma from season 2 onward. The battle matter because they were never just a blasphemy for his wife's memory and the freedom of his people. Clash with the ribbons, Willie chasing his back and his love for Nia. Even pulling string from the stand turned every victory into the leverage. It's tracking the arena carried a personal stack which made the wellness a thing long after this word. 15 years on, few series have matched its stylistic flavor. It was pulpy, It was over the top, but it also bade something to swim. That recommendation explained why Spartacus is still worth a rewatch of Discovery in 2025. Spartacus has always been a little harder to attract on compared to other being a named history drama on streaming. Ida aired on Starz, which mean only certain audiences followed it week to week. Now in the entire saga Blood and Sand, Gods of the Arena and War of the Damned is heading to Netflix's on September 22, making it far easier for new viewer to discover is the perfect time to the cause before the 10-episode sequel series called Spark as House of Ashore was built to be watched as one long story. Music. It began as a tale of revenge and grows into a full-scale rebellion, and with each season raising the strain on Netflix's viewer will finally get to follow the arc without gap. Music. Seeing how Spectrum is anchored by a carefully set rise and fall, I will start things off with a personal admission of guilt when it comes to anything set for back in time, especially those evil shield head horses and blood exotic battle. I'm usually a fan movies like Gladiator and Braveheart or Tvasho like a room have all left me gratefully satisfied upon watching, and I'm always hungry for more of the Samia because of this, you could say. Music. You might be a little blessed toward to show like Starz, Vortex, Music, or Blood and Sand, and you could be right. The moment I saw that this was coming, I was fired with excitement and could not wait to get my eyes on it. But to be perfectly honest, Music, things did not start up too well for me in the store. The pilot episode was a bite of a rocky start. Across me as a combination of Gladiator and 300, but the overpowering stylistic graph effect intent was pure, and the plan was to give a real graphic novel F to be sure did not feel nearly as fitting as they did with his Sandra ultra fun after he handed Spartana. Music, and it all came off his toes. Even so, with my engine love of such a thing, I decided to soldier on and see what happened. This was without doubt an incredibly good decision. Spartacus Blood and Sand tell his story of an unnamed Tishan who along with his fellow marrier have joined the Roman in their fight. Music, in hopes of protecting their even with the successive movies like 300 about his sport and sees like a real about Romanus sport stood on its own as unique insight. Music, into the life and time of the Gladiator projects a famous rebellion. Not much is known about it. The gorgeous years prior to be his reward. So the New Zealand series span a 3-season depicting his early life from 73 to 71 BC as a gladiator in the arena. For fans of nudity and excessive violence, it offered both Hindi abundance, but as fans spend time around Spartacus and his fellow gladiator, they realize the series also offered complex character. Music. Studies of a variety of men doing what they must to survive. It also offered a glimpse into the and a pretty world of the asteroid Roman Wobot and sold Jamaic title. Here Ariel the Collector from Heat series broken down into their respectively personalities according to their mate or as a bricks indicator type. One of the most skilled gladiator in the Gladiator house of the Delicious was a skilled and competent and a great noise showman in a true fashion, as he had a flair for the dramatic living in a moment whenever he entered in a ring. He liked to see an immediate result and was hard on himself when he failed to live up to his own expected. C's was not smart as he was a big cast taker, which made him a perfectly ally in sports rebellion, as are often not the best at planning ahead, and he may not have been able to see a future where Gladiator were free. He did not ask question, he just for his hardest navy was a Slavin house of Fabodas owned by him or elevated status. Music. Any home in short slightly a better treatment, not when it was discovered she was having an affair with the result a gladiator cricks unsure she was banished to the remains her hardworking and dutiful. Music. 8 traits served with the masters. Well, here are comparisons and results shown in here dealing with the gurses who she know was not only being used in the arena to align per human but also be Lord Sito viewed him as less than human and a means for sexual conquest. Like most, Ida was her ability to keep things running smoothly, then let her love affair remain a secret as long as it did. A famous Trojan warrior known for instigating a rebellion about Frida. Music. his fellow gladiator and due to the encompass failing as Slavs in the fleet of Rome. Spartacus was also a loving husband to his wife Sora, as a true Spartacus hating restrictions of his Roman over our Lord and believe it all people should be treated with equal respect because Spartacus was an ISFP and believed in the revolutionary ideas that a few had convinced of. He was a glorying of forces in his eludas. Music. Sumia Gladiator did not side with his belief at first. The wife of the gracious Glorious Scaber and daughter of the Senator Albinius. Music is an extremely wealthy young woman who enjoys the gossip-making pity and the displays of a superiority. Music a friend show and her husband she is often at her induster fashion she must be the center of attention she will do whatever is necessary to gain favor with her fellow wealthy Roman nobles such as but she is a gladiator. Music. To be your fortunate with her layer if it will impress theme like all failures in the moment and almost expose exclusively. Music a for immediating gratification here at pregnancy alone later in the series almost inside of over the patent delight series man chosen by the bad. Music a to loudly with the janitor of his indoors into ship. Omens is the intimidating a dignified and demanded every fight to being honored to be house of the baiters. Music. Like all he is demon is often reserved and aloof, being on formal Buddha behind his calculating mind there is much wisdom to be gained. Spartacus soon discovered his and become a good friend. Music, and mentor him, despite the difference in their station when the house of the bees falls in the back of their unsurprisingly believe he has no surprise purpose left clinging as he has to be personal value and tradition of music. Spartacus help him see also his principle and multiply needed in the conflict ahead. The wife of the Quintessa is a modality wealthy woman in the capo that lies above her husband's Indosofa gladiator floating around in beautifully adorning jewelry, despite their inconsistent fences. She is incredibly focused only around her and her charismatic WS and her husband's social advancement, overly concerned with the opinions of her and Lycia. Music. Most this dictate her action, she tried to take legitimate connection with people of false suggestion such as the clever swipe. Music. And Gladiator uses as a sexual plating, but she soon finds I cannot manipulate. Music. Theme and expect they won't resent her for it, no matter how charming she thinks she is. Once a gladiator in the windows of Abad, Asher found himself becoming his errand boy after he was crippled at the hands of fellow gladiator Chryses as Anna Asher demonstrated cuning institution and adipi all traits which served involving the soft and the blackmail of music, due to being an or had his own set of principles and values which unseen broken by other made him incredibly resentful. He secretly longed to return to the arena and he embarrassed our gladiator brotherhood. The mockery of his injuries ensured he would never trust them and that he would only applaud their downfall. A romantic commander beating the title of Lycos and later in the series Peter. Music. Claver is an ambitious and forceful leader who was responsible for enslaving Spigus and his wife. The true embodiment of and he is logically receive and power hungry often have a hard time being apathetic especially when it involves an author person's perspective. Music which ensures Glaber will always look down on those of lower social standing. He has little regarded for her. Music even his wife lay favoring into focus on his own exploit where took a non-traditional road to become a gladiator various most are forced into his penance. Music a program crime that committed like a true various has a very candid and biased nature he has no delicious about how he worked around him functions and he make the most of performing in it he is warm a generous and kind of reality among the other bloodthirsty gladiator his fair. His inspiring personality makes him a good friend to sport as an ambitious socialite and a competitive owner of a precious Gladiator house. I also be only of the most influential and powerful mana in Gotha. Like most, he liked to not be in a position of leadership and in control and will slowly remove his emotional involvement from his section if they guarantee his social accent, no matter how redless like murder as a landscape. Music. But hasn't he used his gladiator skill well in advancing his status among the noble purples? Getting into the financial or social trouble did not impact his plan as music, and his calculated scamming and ability to talk his way out of any predicament made and showed his success. Starz is one of those shows that the script you does not let go of, particularly during the 13-episode journey of the thrilling first season of Bloody and Land. The show follows one of the most iconic figure in ancient history while incorporating the rich element of old Roman society into the unique culture of Gladiator game. Season 1 focuses on the writer humble Argenta Spartacus as a Slavic gladiator, and it generally works as an epic inspirational story in overcoming adversity. Spill music. There are times where the show can feel a bit lacking, a wee lack of affection or watering it on of emotional depth. What they still sort through each of the 13 episodes of Blood and Sand, which covered the 5 best and 5 weakest of the season. According to the Imbiles on the bit acts as an exciting episode the persuasion for a frustrating detour from the rest of the show in the sports charitable arc. The episode's Jinagori artery and estivage nature remind one of M's retro journey Granio's nature of Spartacus. The sole purpose of this episode seems to be no tree particles doing a sort of humbling as it were, as he has been demoted from the glory of the arena to fight for small wages in the umblia of Roman society. He is relegated to his grim and seemingly hopeless position because of this shameful music surrendering to griers in the arena. Smarty just must know fight and glow music. His way back through the direct swing spiked knuckle tennis and a shield. It's a cool sort of rage and to riches showcase, but it does little to serve the overall narrator and egregious brawl that take place. Does honor also exciting to watch as a full-blown gladiator duel rather than focus on the gladiator training and arena battle for the bulk of its intrigues. These episodes explore the unique practice of Roman. It's also stripe of up some drama between two of the season key characters and mix up the two pairings of arranged body. Spartacus's bad Whitney Wo had planned to sleep with Kykes Willie, her friends, and prepared to sleep with the Spartacus. This clever plot twist is revealed to be after that is Donia music, and the two remove each other's mask. We find the I had deceived who she got grow to dislike and wanted to keep guesses for herself. This vital drama is further complicated by the fact that it literally happens to the wife of Thea Glabber, who has essentially become the one anime of Spartacus by this point. This episode has an 8.3 on IMDb, which is not surprising, even it contains some creative plot devices and some of the more amusing twist on TV. In this episode is forced to participate in a fight that contains some special circumstances but shared a creative twist to the standard face-offs. This battle is meant to play out as a arrangement of a historical Roman battle. The catch: there is a certain emotional responses with this unique scenario and with the subplot one of which focuses on the tragic separation between the per and his slain lover. A fellow creditor named Bursa's Tissel battle feature in this episode is pretty uneventful and lacking excitement. Even going against 6-4s, he is far better music, equipped and trained than his inept opponent, who are merely outmatched criminal pulled from the trade and tossed into the arena. The episode has an 8 only in Shadow Games, and his parties music are forced to team up and fight as a signal destructive unit in the arena. There is also the frightening revelation that Ewan will have to secure Gazy Beard, who has never been defeated in battle, as the only man to have fought him in live. A doctor trained the true in the fight for the ages. While the fire seemed to go south quickly for our true hero, they team up and overcome the massive obstacles standing in gym for glory. This is partly thanks to a despair undergoes the tragic bike crisis. This episode is exciting for visual standpoint and act as a creative metaphor after the unbeatable giant, which will soon be an issue crucially during their slavery mode. Ultra Blood and Sand eventually picks up its pace. It regresses to a rather slow-moving and uneventful sequences of events are for much of its third episode. Legends: a good portion of episode focuses on Spartacus' basic training and a blossoming friendship between Lord Sutria and music. Thea. All of these builds up to the relative high point of the episode. During the celebration of Spartacus mean to face thus far, this led to a flaring antismatic showing on the arena, which is races and physical events. This episode hasn't even enough party favors managed to contain some of the most emotional scene in an early emotional series leading up to one of the biggest trail checker during season. Music. 1. This episode shows us how a cool Roman elite could be reminding of you that despite the accolades and a cheer. Music. Most in society still viewed Gladiator as left to use at their disposal. During the episode, Spartacus holds a birthday party and he lures what began as a harmless entertainment. Music. With Virgin Swap quickly gives way to a gut-wrenching scene in which Spartacus is forced to kill his good friend hero. What make it even darker is in fact that this is done merely for the amusement of Spartacus. A crushing implication for Spartacus and jarring shift in Junia during this episode have quite an impression and is a good reason it earned an 8.5. Despite being the second episode, this feels like the show's true introduction as Spartacus is thrust into his new life as a gladiator under Thea House for the first time. We are also introduced to his friends and companions including Rio. The episode sets the stage for the ongoing rally between the Spicers. Music. And the champion of Rix. The episode feels akin to a sort of the oppressive gladiator version of a high school drama as friendship. Music. And rivalries are established within the Ludos. It's a decent motivational story and basically sets up how the season's premieres in addition. Music. To providing our protagonist Thea motivation he need to press on informs his can save his captured wife. Music. A sword from the clutches of slavery. Beyond this element there is not much action, emotional resonance or substance to be in general during this episode. The final of Blood and Sand contains the season climax from an action standpoint. This episodes just be the season's emotional climax. On the one hand you can look at the revelations as a series of events that's resistible for the epic conclusion to follow, but it's also a grippingly emotion and rich episode in its own right. Music. Spartacus attempted to gather each day every Slav and a gladiator to assist him in his rebellion. Yet we'll soon discover that this will be no easy task as Myra express her concern explaining the dancer opposes to all Slav in his house. Culpable or not, Spartacus has also struggled to convince Grix. Music. Who once simply run off from his life as a triumphant gladiator who has recently regained much of his former glory. Tensions at an uneasy level during music. Revelations not just from the existence Sport made but from a pivotal exchange between the Clapper and Thea Navia's confirmation when it's a gut-wrenching episode that gives you a candy edge of your estate. It is an 8.5 am deb while most of Spartacus's Blood and Sand is laser focused on the family Roman labor time training as a gladiator. This pilot episode is very much in on the show's premiere takes a very different feel as it horns in on the event leading up the capture of Spartacus. Music. A battle with the barbarian hordes that were inside their village of Spartacus' origin story or more accurately historical fiction also provides some exciting action scene and a heartfelt moment yet a gritty outdoor environment, and he emphasizes an off-fledged ancient battle makes it feel more like a laser version of 300 arena character-driven gradual drama. Ida matures into the wild is not a beat episode in its own right. It feels disjointed from the rest of the season and does not do a great job of saying what the show really about. It has a 7.6 rating on MTV. This is when everything needs the fan so to speak that major payoff of Spectre's epic first season. Lost Spectre's trial and tribulation seem to be building up to this grand moment of the rebellion. Music. And Ida makes for an absolutely epic showdown. The show's trademark action and a copious amount of gore all at an all-time high, and the chilling events that transpire at the house of the certainly live up to the title of this episode. Spartacus has finally initiated a full-blown revolt which he and the other Gladiator had been applauding covertly pushed to the edge by the betters was forced Sap to engage in our battle to the daters to insecure the patronage of the Clapper. He feels that this is a charm to strike. The Gladiator give them to show off left but not the dark they had hoped for. This feeling a conclusion to Whisper's days as Liv and a Gladiator has it all. It's visual a spectrum and an emotional roller coaster from start to finish. It has a 9.3 rating on IBM, and this is so the Chartal Practical series on Starz was anything but small in this book. A presented and an epic plot of the Roman rebel Slav and the Gladiator's Spartacus and his triumphant rise and fall. You have got awesome face-off in the arena, circumcision between affection and even full-fledged battle scene with cinema-level quality. Caesar fight and battle are all gripping in their own way. So let's lack up our armor and grab our sword as we reveal the 10 greatest fight and battle scene from the exciting Spy X Blood and Sand. Following the premiere episode of Blood and Sand, in which sport is a singly handy takes out for men, this battle humanizes over protagonist we are meant to be looked upon graces as an unstoppable forces. The champion of Copa and his passing is reinforced with his main heading of Spartacus, similar to the backup of Sora. Music. Spartacus' wife this humbling at the hands of Dix's help, motivated by newly acquired great Gladiator to fight his way to glory. The action scene itself also provide Glenn plenty of a thriller, the clashing of the heavy armor along with a view from inside. Music as combatants all it adds a sense of realism to the fight. This scene, which occurs during the episode's revelations, it provides some need with Roman soldier during the scene takes to secure the import portage of glorious Gabber. To do this, our hero, the same soldier who betrayed Gallagher, must fight a band of fat-trained and fully armored soldier as he watches. The fight is merely a demonstration to showcase his sword so hardened training in the arena, but it ends up being one of the highlight of the season. The scenery of the battle is a refreshing change of pace. The music entry of the House of the Complete with a shallow pool as he battleground. The most interesting fight in Blood and Sand are often the most under. This is certainly the case with egregious skirmish, which plays out more like a bloody boxing match than a Gladiator G. The gaming atmosphere, the oddness of this crowd and anything goes mantra of building a dirt spike and hook hanging from the wall make the arena distinguished by the comparison. A big introduction is both amusing and gripping. We see him spotting the face of this Spartacus fallen pure Gladiator despite with music. Him. This ball of broad face is fun in its own way, as our hero has essentially reached rock bottom at this point. While this fighting sequences does not offer a tone of drama in the visual spectre, music carries a unique level of emotions. No, that is not exciting to watch, especially since our Portugal's face of seeks opponent. During this battle in the arena, sports is for to take on only a criminal as kingsman to insult to injury. He must freeze officer Isa responsible for slaying several of his people years ago. This is meant to be a celebratory raceman for him who is looking to an arena. The conclusion of this fight is also symbolic and is significant, taking his sport as one of the few fight that does not involve specters who is injured at this time. This battle of the premise how he's also only the champion of the couple. The fight is unique in that music. It contain a more BS of this fitness and finesse rather delicate, but more significantly this scene present a great redemption arc from who has made it by him and the cause a side by in favor of the spies. The pilot episode of Blood and Sand, the Red Serpent, is an emphatic way to kick it off his gladiatorized glory with his abundance. Music of awesome action scene, one of the best to come right on the hill of Spartacus defying his Roman commander. After being informed he will get into the bag from the Roman forces to save his village from the creative spot, began his journey as one-man army. He is first off to Savia his wife from a group of great predator which he initiated with an ossachadia in which he wipes a dagger right past a sword and head of an attacker. Solidana joins in a potring. Music, in a neatly choreographed skirmish. Do not share. There is no greater victory than to fall from this world a free man. The forces of spectators and guesses are coming together for a final clash. On the outskirts of Rome, Spartacus and his inner circle made to call. Music, the Roman attempt to advance on a mass rebel Buddha fall into a hidden spike. Music. which they dug in the night. The rebels then use Pang to span the ditch and attack the front lines. Soon and Sox attack the Roman rear with the horsemen. They have you sowing confusion and letting them attack at the Roman artillery. Spartacus catches a sign of the crisis and pursues him off at the battlefield. He killed all of his god but takes several deep injuries. Music A to his credit simply arms himself and says come higher. The two fight as Faldradas eventually disarm his after conjuring his own wrist arm however just before killing the Crossios Camona soldier and falter his near fatally hewn away but the damage is none. At the Samia time people are overwhelmed by Thea eventually surrounded and personally knocked out by the Caesar himself. Selvia with a third silver wire ovens orders for him all the captures thus in all the Abian way which includes him even at the innocent however Pompey has stolen the credit for Spot's defeat but to crash his F because it will make him and a Caesar Pompey's ally allowing them to reconstruct a fierce try then they can abandon the so of history Ganacas does Ella glorified find happiness and peace in his death as he says a spirit welcoming music him into the afterlife and his personal Eliza Maria people worrying him in the arena. Meanwhile, Spartacus finds his own space as a music, in that as Aldo Natala survived. Some managed to gain the Amuntian part and will be able to find a true freedom. Music, beyond the reach of Pharaoh and he will see Sora on the afterlife as rain falls upon spectral death. Music, Agnan the other will lives bury him in the unmarked grave where the organ place upon the ground above his final resting place where he lies under the fatty red so before Toa walked toward the path of free freedom. Gaines and Castors historically broke away from Spatizes and met here in a separate battle. Here watch Ganigazanda join. Such a great example is the Gusa seeing a vision of Onas before him as he does on the cross. Patrick mentioned however did not return. They just use the A footage of him. Spartacus has flashback on Sora, Myra and Faria while fighting Cassius. Sibley has full frontal nudity in her love scene with Aganis and he actually make her the last character to have a nude scene in the series. Case is also trained to fight while shirtless and very sweet making his double as a fan services. The episodes start with the various character cutting to Romans and declaring they are spicy cases. This revealed it to be a section strategy as a confused Roman command is receiving report of fast sparks at multiple locations to continue to insist on being in a mix whenever possible. Lamchet when the Romans used test a road formation. Navy remarked it fell to the protected maneuver as it returned Nito and been hoping for him to do so the plan was to pull him out Latra hidden beneath the ground and climb over it to share information. It start training as his practices die. Music. Avarius again says that if he dies in the battle, he will wait for Sibley in the afterlife. The newborn baby that Goanda have delivered previously is among the survivor that escaped the Pompeius forces. Music. Sibley gives the Gonix a hardwood idol for good luck during the battle. He dies while she survive. Argu manly girl cast absolutely weeps over Spartacus dies in front of him. Says start growing in horror when he hear a jetty report care to get back at him. Siasaurus is the cases that he is good mono who does what he must when looking open just leaves being the cliffied including the core herself. Gracious sir aunt that ye do what I must. The episode open with a nod to the famous I'm sport moment from and the movie not so above it all she well execute him and an all living hero Buddha even she said that she's pray for the woman to fall to better man graph forces to defeat Spartacus but Gross does not carry to deliver the killing blow it takes all the credit for the victory and with his son dead and lover purified Isoclear Gross has not everything except his status. And if go by historical record his wife has plenty of affair with other men to the point that the Romans jogged about no none of their children looked like him. Caesar was in fact one of her partner. Sora was fully naked when she was taken by the clever man in the red serpent. Spectatus flush back to his show-rated dresses and recover her modest name, while Spectrix forces and managed to keep the Roman at bay for a while using the guerrilla warfare and unexpected drug cases. Music. In a battle with Thera army seriously they played superior in numbers. Music. of Roman Empire. Thea are finally defeated. Even for a series where Hollywood feeling is an abandoned organ, hands are crippled from his affliction in the previous episode to the point he can longer hold us. Spartacus has an action movie style due to the dead graces. Spartacus has an action movie style due to the dead graces. Music. As the final antagonist of the series. But since he is a figurehead for the whole rebellion and cases the Imperator, he is killed from behind by the other soldier. Coria may have had justified reason to defect to Spot's side and may have been generally in love with her, but if she was not punished by him then the Senator would have done so as he last dying as Squatus's mercies. They finally see Sora again. Jonicus also says that if he dies in the battle, we will wait for Spa sibling in the afterlife with the ornamental pants and militia to keep him company. As in real life, Rome the rebellions' strategies are countless. Music. Intelligent and effective. The Roman simply refuses to run out of mina. Music. And even fire artillery. The Novid that will hit their Antagana the edge when they start losing ground in a most seducing yet tempting example. Spartacus goes too well to the kill Caesar the all-line and comes within a hair threat of killing him. Casus is able to put up a pretty competitive fight against Spartacus, perhaps the sole Romana in sales. Music. To ever go to term with him. But Spartacus had already taken a few nasty injuries from fighting his way. Music. To the corner grasses. Vicasus did get a nasty head wound when he tried to take care of Spark on a horse and got music himself slashed in the head for obvious reason. Spartacus clearly was the worst of our two of theme even. Music however, Spartacus still pro himself a start or fair him even and not even Picasso's signature movie of a bare-handed blade block. It is hard to believe added the series which has made more than a fair share of struggle both with the untimely passing of original series led Annie Whitfield and the sheer amount of people who wrote Spark test of early on mistakenly believing it to be for purely interest. Music actually made it as far as this program did, but as we approached the final episode, music, of Spark's War of Theodide, the series easily illustrated how it managed to become music. One of the most consequently enjoyable, well-written and yet tragically underrated programs on the television, and as the series progressed towards the end, which will certainly be thought of coming too soon, it was clear that even a story could have been decompressed and drawn into a smaller stroke. The road to victory had been given the considerable to by Stefano as the knight. Music. And he seemed a fair writer, which is why even the final hour of Spartacus would have an enormous amount of heavy fight to do the opening sequences, which also serves us as a nice homage to any practice perfectly and let's say the message, music, of the series and the legacy of all the character we have come to know. Music and feel something for admittedly the opening moment when Jean's just it felt as thought some tricky. Music might be a fool, but I did any play game as regarding the imageability. Music of their character fade. The writer simply and effectively demonstrated how the name Spartacus had become something more important than a single man. The name Spartacus is something as powerful and legend with clear as throat. Meaning as the bringer of rain was to bet also before it will become the synonym analysis with his dome. The name Spartacus had been transferred into a symbol and a movement. Music, that could be embodied by all of those thirsting to be free. That notion is made clear. One final term is Partius and a genus have a quiet discussion where they discover how radically a divergent path and come to an end pretty much the same plus willing to do so that the other good to carry on. That at this minute what the name sparked also truly meant. The attrition sums it by saying life is what defined not the death of Romans nor war nor those that follow a century better, but the life of a sibling all later the mother and here a child they all soar up and I would see them live. That establishment of the series, music, intent and sharp delivery of the message allowed victory to gradually become an intense music, and a breathless wave of action that gleefully toyed with viewer expectations without disrupting the purpose and meaning of the incapable climax. From the onset it was clear how outboard Spark this was. How silly it seemed for him to take a stand against he might of Rome. And in this instance we are reminded of how Acasus fell and still despite the insurmountable and his certainly of his fate. Swigas puts on a brilliant music showing, and for a brief moment the viewer is invited to believe that a history can, in this instance, any weary music. We rewritten a sport Spartacus tuning and relentless dry music a romance moment reality team Monrella, especially when Janigas arrived, dividing the army's attention and narrowly missing the graces and Caesar with a barrage of Roman spear, but as soon as a lug swinging of flaming armor, music out at the momentum began to shift and familiar character are sent off to the afterlife. Music, where we know theme from the first moment of the series during courts of the arena. Music, or even during War of the Damned as each a character fall in battle. They that land with him. Music, as soon and shim impactful, but victory does not settle for simply one and turn. Music, confrontations instead a delight with a moment like Spartacus knocking sons from his horse Thana after pursuing him at hill and slaying the several of his men. Music, hatching Acris's signature technique and using Ida against him. It was like the battle itself. A losing end over, but one that was filled with some incredible and unforgettable moment, and while the battle was won for Rome sort of like history would remember it. The cost was great on both sides would have his victory, but adding friends altered Gloria and more's the life of Dacor. Meanwhile, Agenicus found in something Willie living for and up fight for, music but is greeted in the death by Theominus and the roar of the arena. He was once a guardian victory, and the series ends with the Argon Nazar and the other survivor. Music, looking back another man who had shown them to their freedom, leaving these particles under a red serpent as had been foretold when the series first began. Drawing that kind of circle back to the beginning of the series was an incredible music. Effectively whale-fending spiders, and it helped demonstrate once more just how Ford series music had come since its seemingly beginning. This is a kind of series one hopes it is not soon forgotten. Looking back on our supporters as a whole, it seems impossible that it ever will be. Read it only if you have already watched for music, the series final of Spartacus, a war of the term. Would he live or die? Music. That was the questions heading into the series final of Spartacus tonight. While history tells us the titular hero and his rebel forces were defeated by the might of Rome, some history have claimed Spartacus' body was never actually found, lending a glamour of hope that the gladiators lived in a barbarian leader cleared by the late Annie Whitfield. Music, and Debellium might actually make it out of the series alive. Those hopes were dashed when the sporters on the verge of killing Marcus Aurelius. Music were spared by a soldier from behind. After being carried off by a grunt, he died peacefully. As he continued, former Slavs he worked to frame and to protect, and it made it to reach safety. Other various like Janicos who had strung open on the cross and left to be not so fortunate. Music, who spoke with his Spartacus about why Portigus had to be done, why he did where he did, and whole other replanned section to the final. Music, we did not see 7 can there was some minor debate, and I hear this from the fans non-stop hiding never found his body. We would love to see him wander up into the sunset. My feeling is Sparta incited this rebellion of thousands and thousands of Slav Goda killed. It would be distinguished to have him walk off into the sunset. Music plus just a simple fact that he has nothing to walk after, his love for his wife, which bring us all the way until the final scene of the series. His love for his wife and at loss really keeps him from ever having a life beyond this. His life really ended with her, and his a chance of happy life of a simple life for him. I was either going to win or he was going to die. There is, snort say, really no middle ground to ignite. No. Actually I was pretty adamant that he had to fail. Story-wise, it just did no to ring. Music. True for me that he sleep away. I was also pretty adamant that somebody. Music. Wicked about her to be get away and carry on the story of Thesa Partic, but for me with Spartacus it all always needed that powerful ending, which I think is probably a little more in keeping with history. I did not believe that Spartacus got away. I think if he did you would have from him again. He does not seem the type of guy. Music. To sleep quilty into the dark night also. So I never really went on this path from the beginning of the series. My plan has always been that he does on the battlefield and is scared of all immortality. Music. Wounded and carried off. Jake not dead want to mania different version. The first version was aware voodoo. Music. A girl back to aware gases was fighting via Gladiator in episode 1 and he uses the Samia trick. Music. On Spartacus and an earlier draft it actually worked and he runs particles through and we looked at it hence did not feel right about it glasses besting the particles. Music. In a fight even it is very clear that Spartacus was seriously wounded before the fight started. So he went round and finally sat alone. You know what would be cool if Cases does not the same trick and Spartacus stop him and almost kills him which was much better. And then I also wanted to mirror a little bit of how Creases that. Music basically these two gent by being stabbed in the back. Jake Rails and Athra one that scene very difficult. I must have written 6 or 7 different versions of that scene early on. He did not see an ominous in his final moment. He just started his particles name in the finest and that worked okay. But I needed something, so I added sing and all because I thought that really wrapped up everything Johnny's was always saying. Music. About seeing his brother again on the shores of the afterlife. Any nanga seeing him and Malika would grade Johnny's in the afterlife. So I added that part and it worked pretty well and really I think the masterstroke cameo from our director Rick Jebb, Music A. Jacobson who really orchestrated that transition on across the arena and Johnny is returning to the only true home he ever had the only place he ever felt he belonged. Oh yeah, I remember finishing the first draft after the script that the first draft was actually about 15 pages longer journey final draft. There is an intermiddle act of fiction that we cut out where particular Music A sets up this trap where they draw one of the legends of Cases and then the legend thinks they are attacking Thessy particles Raxulus but everyone has left and the place has been drenched in oil and deserted on fire and basically a burn elegium. Music. And originally that's where Lugo is in the same way but then it was way too long. We wanted it to keep it on. But my feeling was I'd just kind of delayed what the episode was really about. So, we had to sheep that out and you could go to life a little while longer. But I remember handing in the draft of the script and my first thought was well, we will never be able to shoot as I mean it's just a way too big for TV schedule in the Tvavard. Music. We had a lot of talk. There was several different versions of the final battle with basically the Samia element. Music. But we finally got Ida down to the point where it was only just impossible to shoot and Eric Jacobson the director just did a phenomenal job. I think it's the best work of his career. He spaded it in somehow by Kuka with a little bit of crook. Music. We got it all on the screen. I looked at Ida quite frankly and I'm shocked at the game we were able to be a gym. Considering the amount of them we have yet to shoot it. I think it's really unlike anything that's ever been shown seen on television at that night. That was Rob idea. Music and thought that was absolutely brilliant. He really wanted to give a note to be everybody who had a speaking part on Spartacus and we also wanted to find a way. Music. To pay tribute to end in those final momenta and I have always loved the end credit on the show and I thought that was just the perfect way to go. Music. Out. Jack know it when it was sold to the store. It was very much sold as an already rated action series and as we started working on it, we started to delay in the bigger element. Music. Of love and romance. We received an incredible amount of attitude from Starz. We received an incredible amount of attitude from Starz, especially in that first season where they let us to do pretty much whatever we wanted because they had this amazing trust in us. Music. A lot of people out there who don't watch this, think it's their soft girl really violence thrashy Gladiator show but we always were shooting for something more. We were always shooting for a deeper emotional story and I am very proud of that story. Music. We have CH and Dia could not be prouder of the final. Ending a series always a monumental task, and many greater men that I have stumbled ending a series, but in Thea's case I just think it does all cameo together beautifully. Music. Before she was Game of the Trolls on another premium subscription television channel was looking for a history. The series fell with a blood and flush. The Source network struggled to keep up with their competitor. A tradition hero arrived to the better and claimed a victorious Spartacus. The short rested for season of one of most popular premium network television shows in history. If you have not seen Spartacus for yourself, you can check it out and on Netflix's. Be warned, once you have gotten out for Arena, there will be much being watching in your future. For now, let's take a look back at what ultimately proved to be some smashing success for Starz and discuss some less renowned fact about the series you may not have known until now. We all know that when shows or movie air or based on actual events line, it really means we will be watching a true-to-life arrangement of event more often. The truth is such thin over the fiction. Don't get us wrong when we say Spartacus was based on the historical event and the characters. We are not checking National Geography levels of accuracy here. We just how closely stick to what is known about the overarching story of Spartacus from the page of history may surprise you. Take the titular character Spartacus himself. The main history known was in fact as a show portrays a young gladiator who was enslaved and forced into the gladiator combat by the Roman, that later escaped and was an instrumental figure in the church survival war. A Slav uprising that took place between 73 and 71 BC. If you have watched the practices on Starz music, you might also recognizing a few other names of Mina who were leaders of their rebellion. Thea names Grias, Anemias and Gannicus should ring a few bell for friends of Thea Storm. Were also actual people who actually took part in an actual slavery revolt. Even the historical record of the Third Survival War contains some disagreement on the final detail where some of the seamen came from, the exactly what role they played in history. So the show's writers had plenty of sleeping getting their world and the character within it. But a blockbuster show again began with one foot planted solid in history, and he began filling in the blank from there, while taking a few names overhead between pin up a history clause and turning them into a television series may not on the surface sound like much attention was paid to the actual history of particles and each survival war. Those real-life events affected the show on many levels, and we will get into a bit more later. First, let's talk about what a big deal the show was for Starz. Back in 2010, the Starz network was struggling to pull in a viewer as other premium paid TV network, namely HBO. Music seemed to be pulling in line share of a viewer. Starz was constantly in a search of something to give them a boost to viewership and rating, and that's exactly what Spartacus did from the moment the show made its debut, with the previous original series Crash only pulling in a reported 185,000 people when it made its Starz debut. Spartacus smashed through the excessing regard for network, bringing in 661,000 new viewers on Starz and 580,000 on sister network Encore, and ended up bringing in a total of $3.3 million viewer on CV weekend, and ended with a strong debut under its belt. The show continued to impress, growing at the replicated abuses that returned episode after episode, and Spartacus nearly single-handled the reinvigorated network, continuing to increase viewer numbers and set Starz original series music record, some of which would not be beaten until 2015, with this debut setting the viewership a record of 4 stars. One might guess that the network knew it had a potential hit music on its handle with the Spartacus. That guess would be correct, seeing as how the show received, and for a second season even before a single episode had aired, they were willing to stand behind music. Sporting USA early on, perhaps adding a sense of safety. We were who would be more willing to get emotionally invested in a series they knew would be coming back for another season. The Starz network, it was not just guessing whether or not Spartacus would be hit with. However, Thea had a huge multi-fracted marketing Thea compare in place intended to get viewer turning into a dirty sweet battling it out in the arena every week. As it turns out, Spartacus was a real-life fight for comic, especially seeing as a horror series was shot in the overexposed video style. Reminiscent of A 300, that film was an adaptation of a popular graphic novel. Audiences proved it to be respective to what Spartacus had to offer in comic form. Each entry into the sports comic series highlighted the rival races among the show Gladiator, providing some background and a context as to how those were destined to die. Music and off-screen, taking the successful sports comic book series for Devil due to Thea and Next Level. A 4-part motion comic series was adopted from the pages of Sada Comic. All of the whistle part belonged well with fantastic voice acting in Thea series, and if you are a true fan of Thea's particular series, it is an absolutely a must-watch. Some of the artwork it does come across a bit awkward given the way some of the plan panel were animated. Among the wise talent brought in to bring life to the comic, where Kevin's work also include credit in multiple Marvel and DC animated series, and Ray Parker, better known to be Nerd Commentary, one and the only Dead Mole. As it hype of the debut of Spartacus on Starz began to build the comic in motion comic series paved the way for the world, viewers were about to be engrossed in over the next several years. Of course, once the series proved her success, the Sportycast franchise continued to be supplied to media than just television, and comic slew immensely popular series to another level with your introduction out of a board game and video game issue. At top game publisher Gale Force S9 released Spartacus, a game of blood and tracery in 2012 with a limited release that year's gone. Event Gaming, a deconvention and general licer letter that's a mere sporty game of blood, and it tragically maintains a very positive rating over on board broad gaming gig to this day, and this is considered a favorite among many long-term table at hope and insist. The video game released by Thea observed the next year does not quite live up to those standard release only at Xbox to 360 and PlayStation entry in September of 2013. Spartacus Legend holds a partly 1,245 by 100 review score for the Xbox version. Our own popular review aggregate Metacritic, while the PS3 version comes in only slightly ahead with an average review score of 15 by 100. Even if the video game was not that great, Spartacus had become a success for Starz, which makes our next two entry even more tragic, with a second season already ordered. Spartacus made his debut on Starz in January of 2010 to an audiences that would continue to grow over as filming for the previously ordered scenes job near lead director Andy Whitfield was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's of Whitfield began receiving a treatment in New Zealand. Season 2 of Spartacus was postponed, and report users struggled to figure out what was next for them. It says as a result of the Whitfield illness, producers chose a short 6-figure scalable mini sales which during part of the second season run term, and the original plan for season 2 were put on hold as a crew awaited White's expected recovery. The miniseries Spartacus, Gods of the Arena focuses on the history of House Spartacus before the arrival of Spartacus and explores how many of the characters we meet in the main series came to be where they were when Spartacus entered the story. Sadly, while Andy Whitfield's victory over cancer seemed promising, it was short-lived. During a routine follow-up medical examination, doctors discovered that his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma had returned, despite him receiving a clean bill of health in June 2010. By September of that same year, the cancer had come back, and Whitfield once again began treatment. Andy Whitfield fought the disease bravely for another year, but unfortunately, on September 11, 2011, he passed away at the age of 39, just 18 months after his diagnosis. During this difficult period, Andy and his wife allowed cameras to document their personal battle with cancer. The resulting documentary, Be Here Now, the Andy Whitfield story, provides a raw and emotional look at the daily struggles of living with the disease and the impact it has on a family. With Whitfield facing cancer for a second time only months after the illness returned, a difficult decision had to be made regarding the future of the Spartacus series. Andy Whitfield chose to step away from his role as the lead character, and Australian actor Liam McIntyre was brought in to take over as Spartacus. Although the series had lost its original leading man, Spartacus continued for 2 more seasons after the prequel miniseries, with fans embracing McIntyre in the title role. The story became even more intense as the Slav rebellion reached its final stages in Spartacus, War of the Damned, which served as the 4th and final season. Many viewers wondered why such a successful show would come to an end. Ratings remained strong, and the series could have continued for several more years. The answer goes back to the historical accuracy that the creators always tried to maintain. According to historical records, Spartacus most likely died at the end of the Third Civil War, just as he does in the series finale. While the writers and producers created many dramatic moments, battles, and character details from their imagination, the overall story was based on real historical events. When the creators reached the point in history where Spartacus' death occurred, they decided to bring the story to a close. They could have continued by creating fictional events and moving further away from historical records, but instead, they chose to remain as faithful to the original story as possible. In doing so, they completed the journey that had been hinted at since the first season. With Spartacus officially ending, fans were left mourning not only the loss of a beloved character but also the world they had become deeply invested in over the years. There was even a brief moment of excitement when a report claimed that the Sci-Fi network would be picking up the series and producing new episodes. The news quickly spread among fans, creating hope that Spartacus would return. Unfortunately, the information was misunderstood. Sci-Fi had only acquired the rights to air the existing 39 episodes, and no new seasons were ever planned. Fans once again had to say goodbye as the series slowly became part of television history. Despite taking creative liberties, the show succeeded because it combined historical events with powerful storytelling, memorable characters, and intense drama. However, Hollywood did change a few important details. For example, there is limited historical evidence about the final outcome of the Third Civil War beyond the basic events. Another major difference involves Spartacus himself. Historians generally agree that Spartacus likely died during a battle against the Roman forces, but his body was never recovered. After the battle, Spartacus' army was destroyed, leaving thousands of bodies scattered across the battlefield. Many survivors were captured and crucified along the road between Rome and Capua. While it is unlikely that Spartacus survived and lived a peaceful life after the defeat of his army, history also does not suggest that his body was ever found and displayed as a trophy. If you have not watched Spartacus yet, it remains a must-see series for fans of historical drama, action, and powerful storytelling. Once you step into its brutal arena, there is plenty more to discover. Today, we look back at what became a major success for the creators and explore some lesser-known facts about the series that many fans may not know. While not every detail shown on screen happened exactly as history recorded it, the show successfully transformed an ancient rebellion into one of television's most unforgettable stories.